date back to 1875 when the forerunners to the Canterbury Building Society were found. Then Southern Cross Building Society, another party to the merger, was established in 1923. Then Merrick was established in 1957. How did those organisations come together? Well, I guess in 2007, with my business partner Chris Mace, we took a shareholding in Southern Cross Building Society, and I became chairman. And that was just pre the global financial crisis, and the markets were running hot with finance companies and so on and so forth. And I guess the long-term vision was that we saw an opportunity to establish a bank in New Zealand. The building societies had lots of deposits, but the banks had stolen their business by lending on first mortgages, the big four banks. So we looked at other alternatives, and during 2007, once the global financial crisis was underway, one of the shareholders in Canterbury Building Society put his shares approximately 11% on the market. So Southern Cross bought those, and that was then created the relationship between a Northland Building Society, Southern Cross, and a Southern Building Society, Canterbury Building Society. Geoff Greenslade had become the CEO of Marrick, and I talked to Geoff and said, "You're borrowing at Marrick your money wholesale, and it's quite costly for you. What if you could get your deposit base of the two building societies and use those deposits to lend on your Marrick book?" So, long story short, in 2010, a memorandum of understanding was signed between Canterbury Building Society, Southern Cross Building Society, and Marrick, owned by Pine Gould. And that merger was completed in 2011. And subsequently, in 2011, also they acquired the new business. Heartland acquired Pine Gould Finance, PGW, Pine Gould Finance, which was a rural financier. So you had, on the asset side of your balance sheet, you had rural finance and motor vehicles, and on the other side, you had the deposits from the two building societies. It was difficult times in the early in the global financial crisis. So in many ways, the three parties were a coalition of the willing, because they knew they were stronger together, and the best chance to get a banking license was to put it all together and create the merger. Bill Gates once said that the world needs banking, but it doesn't need banks. And by that he meant it doesn't need branches. So it foreshadowed really what was happening, that banks were moving towards a digital phase. And the opportunity for Heartland was to not have a big branch network and a lot of overheads, but use motor vehicle dealers to provide the assets for the motor vehicles and move down the journey on the online space, as they have with new products like Open for Business, and to compete not head on with the big banks, but in spaces where they didn't operate or where there were niches available to Heartland, such as reverse mortgages, livestock financing, motor vehicle financing, and so on. Originally, my godfather left me some shares in Southern Cross when he passed away in the late 60s. I was living in London and came back in late 73, early 74, and tried to get a mortgage to buy my house from Southern Cross Building Societies, but I got turned down. So, well, I don't know whether I got turned down. I didn't qualify, put it that way. And anyway, so the shares went in the bottom drawer. And then fast forward from 1974 to 2005, when the world was booming again and finance companies were booming and looked to be making good money, I thought about the building society. So I got my shares and found I was listed as a gone no address shareholder, so I got my address corrected. There are only a few hundred shares really. And anyway, with my business partner, Sir Christopher Mace, we managed to get quite a big shareholding in Southern Cross Building Societies, and I became chair then. By this time, the global financial crisis had struck, and Canterbury Building Society had a shareholder that quickly wanted to realise its shareholding, and Southern Cross Building Society bought that. And so then we had a South Island Building Society, a North Island Building Society, and as I've said before, that's when I talked to Geoff. It was a commercial deal that made sense to everyone. So like any three-way merger, it took time, but I think, as I've said, there was certainly a coalition of the interested and possibly willing to put it together, and it worked. We got a bank licence in 2012, listed on the stock exchange in 2012. At the time of the merger, the equity in the business was approximately 300 million. The assets were 2.2 billion, and the profit for the pro forma profit for the year was about 11 million. So today, our equity, so we're 7 years on. Our equity is in the stock exchange listed just under $1 billion. Our profit is in the late 70s, and the assets have grown to about 5 billion. So significant growth over 7 years by any measure. I think the lending it does with Open for Business, the reverse mortgages, we're a big player in that in both Australia and New Zealand, so we're quite unique in that market. And I think because we're constantly exploring, like in terms of what we lend on and deposits we attract, a lot of the old building society clients, have been loyal, and we've grown many new depositors with the business as well. So people like the model. They see us as a particularly New Zealand-owned business, looking after New Zealanders' money, I guess. That's what we do. I see the future very strong and bright for Heartland. We'll continue to operate in the asset space and differentiated markets from the banks. We continue to attract deposits readily, and we're, I guess, a pioneer in the sense we're the only listed New Zealand bank, and we're moving strongly down the digital space. We've only got a couple of branches left, and we're becoming a digital bank, which is where the future is from our point of view.